You ever have one of those days where the universe lines up just right, and then a single neighbor with a clipboard decides to turn it into the worst week of your life? Yeah, that was supposed to be our perfect vacation. After 3 straight years of working ourselves half to death, my wife Sophia Bennett finally managed to carve out 2 whole weeks for us, just to recharge. No emails, no late-night emergencies, just us, a quiet house, a mountain of gardening stuff, and a Netflix queue so long it could outlast a winter storm. That Tuesday morning was the kind of peaceful you almost don't trust, you know? Sophia brewed her special dark roast. I half-heartedly fiddled with a work article from my home office, and the rest of our cul-de-sac felt sleepy content the way suburbs are supposed to feel until about 7 a.m., when everything flipped upside down. Sophia, still in pajamas, needed to shuffle her SUV so I could run to the store. She backed it up, parked it with the front tire maybe 2 inches over the invisible border between our driveway and the shared edge with Margaret Pierce, our HOA president, and as we were about to find out, neighborhood tyrant. 2 inches, I swear, and I measured it later. 2 harmless inches, except apparently in Margaret's world that's grounds for war. She showed up so fast, clipboard and ruler in hand, it was like she'd been hiding in the bushes waiting for an infraction. Pressed khaki shirt, embroidered HOA president face scrunched so tight it could sour milk. Violation. She shrieked loud enough to scatter every bird in 3 zip codes and make a dog bark down the street. Your vehicle is encroaching on common property. That's a violation of HOA Code 7.3 to B. Sophia just stared at her, still holding her coffee, like maybe this was all a bad dream. "I'll move it," she said. Calm as ever, but Margaret physically blocked her path like she was defending the Alamo. "Too late, this is your 3rd warning," Margaret announced, scribbling furiously on her clipboard. Sophia's calm cracked a bit. "This is literally the first time we've ever talked about parking." Margaret's face went full purple. "Ignorance is no excuse. I have photographic evidence dating back months. You're on my radar, Bennett, for flouting community standards." And then from our window I caught sight of her husband Thomas, peeking out from behind their curtains, mouthing, "Sorry," before vanishing, like a man who'd seen this scene play out too many times before. Sophia, bless her, tried to reason with Margaret. "I'm on vacation. I'll move the car. Can we just be done?" But Margaret was in some kind of frenzy, snapping photos of the SUV from every angle, like she was building a case for the Supreme Court. At one point, our neighbor George walked by with his beagle and stopped to watch the show. Later, he told me Margaret had threatened 3 people with a citizen's arrest this year, once for leaving trash cans out, once for repainting a door the wrong color. And believe it or not, once for grandkids drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. Each time she threatened to call the cops, and every time people just laughed it off, but this felt different. It was like she had it out for us. As Sophia moved the car, I caught her jotting something down in a little notebook. When I asked about it, she showed me pages of dated entries, every interaction with Margaret, every ridiculous demand, every time she'd gotten in Sophia's face. "I'm keeping records," Sophia said, almost smiling. "You never know when you'll need them." The next day, as I was grabbing the mail, George sidled up and dropped a bombshell. "You know, Margaret wanted your house, right? Last year she was picking out curtains for her sister, then you swooped in with that cash offer. She thinks you stole her dream." Suddenly the vendetta made sense. We hadn't just bought a house. We'd stepped on Margaret's plans. And now she was going to make us pay. For the next 48 hours, Margaret unleashed psychological warfare. At 5 a.m. sharp on Wednesday, car alarms went off, and I found heavy-duty traffic cones blocking our driveway with a laminated sign zip-tied to one parking restricted by HOA enforcement. Sophia, robe and all, took photos, wrote it down. "Isn't this illegal?" I asked. She just shrugged. "Let her dig her own hole." By the time I moved the cones, Margaret was out front, filming us with her phone, yelling about theft of HOA property. Later, she slapped neon orange violation stickers all over our windows, grass, a 1/4 inch too tall, mailbox, not aligned, visible hose, unsightly, and my favorite doorbell chime, too loud. Sophia kept her cool, kept documenting. "Should we call the actual police?" I asked. "Not yet," she said. "Let her keep going." That night at 11, Margaret got on her loudspeaker bellowing, "Attention residents, criminals live at 4278 violators of community standards." She kept it up hourly until 3 a.m., waking the whole block. Someone yelled, "Shut up, Margaret," out their window. She just shouted back, Defenders of criminals will face justice. Thursday, things hit peak crazy. Margaret appeared in a cheap police costume, navy shirt, iron-on enforcement letters, a toy, badge, pepper spray, zip ties, the whole works. She stalked up and down the sidewalk, snapping pictures, muttering into a disconnected walkie-talkie. By noon, she taped a fake eviction notice to our door signed Officer M. Pierce, Chief of HOA Enforcement. Sophia just laughed, filed it in her growing folder. She's really all in, isn't she? That evening, Margaret hosted an emergency neighborhood watch meeting at a folding table in our yard. 5 neighbors showed up out of pure curiosity. She ranted about us being a threat to property values, paraded her new utility belt, promised real authority soon. Thomas, her husband, watched from their window but never came out. Friday morning, Margaret set up a lawn chair stakeout on her side of the property and started live streaming to what she called her HOA enforcement social media group, which turned out to be mostly her own sock puppet accounts. At 7:15, when Sophia came out in pajamas to grab the paper, Margaret leapt to her feet. "Stop. You're under citizen's arrest for violating HOA Code 7.3. B." She actually tried to cuff Sophia, who, by the way, wasn't even fazed. "Margaret, I'm getting my paper. Move." Margaret puffed up, waving her toy handcuffs. "Hands behind your back. You have the right to remain silent." Sophia just stared at her, genuinely curious. "What authority do you have to arrest anyone?" Margaret declared she was a duly appointed HOA officer with extensive training, which we'd later find out came from late-night cop shows and a $29.99 online course. Then she dialed 911, pretending her phone was a shoulder radio, and told the dispatcher, "A violent woman is threatening me," the operator asked. "What's the threat?" Margaret replied. "She's walking aggressively, with a weapon." Sophia held up her coffee mug. "What weapon?" "A vehicle. Margaret insisted she could run me over." The dispatcher, to their credit, asked, "Is she in the vehicle?" "No, but she could be." That's when the sirens arrived, 2 cruisers, then 2 more. Margaret beamed like she'd just won the lottery, waving her fake badge at the officers. "Thank God you're here. I've made a citizen's arrest." The lead officer, Martinez, glanced from Margaret in costume to Sophia in bunny slippers to me at the door. Then his face changed. "Sheriff Bennett?" he asked. Sophia, not really a question. She grinned. "Hey, Martinez, how's Jennifer?" Turned out, my wife is not just a sheriff, but the sheriff chief of the whole county. The officer straightened up, trying not to laugh. Margaret's face melted. "Sheriff," she whispered, the handcuffs clattering to the ground. Martinez turned to Margaret. "This is Sheriff Sophia Bennett. She's our boss." Phones were recording now, neighbors peeking out. The Petersons, whom Margaret once fined for a wrong-colored bin, watched gleefully. She tried to arrest the sheriff, someone whispered. Sophia sipped her coffee. "Let's see how deep this goes." Margaret shrieked about conspiracies, even after the officers charged her with false imprisonment and impersonating an officer. Margaret doubled down, hiring a sleazy lawyer whose face is all over local bus stops. She posted in every neighborhood group, "Corrupt sheriff threatens innocent woman," but most people just laughed. Still, her 5 loyal board members called an emergency HOA meeting, which packed the community center. Margaret strutted in with a new blazer and a PowerPoint, "The corruption next door." Slide 1, Sophia's coffee mug labeled "Potential Weapon." Slide 2, obsessive measurements of our driveway. Slide 3, a timeline of our crimes like excessive smiling. The crowd snickered, but Margaret ranted. Sophia waited, then laid out the facts. 147 photos Margaret took of our property. 32 bogus violation notices, recordings of the loudspeaker harassment, the police report of Margaret's attempted arrest. The room fell silent. Board members asked, "When did we approve all this? Are we liable if she hurts someone?" That's when Thomas finally stepped forward, hands shaking, and handed Sophia a USB drive audio from their garage camera. Margaret screamed, "What are you doing?" Thomas said, "I'm done enabling her." A vote was called. Margaret survived by 2 votes, crowing, "I am the law here," but the investigation kept rolling. Internal Affairs reviewed everything, placed Sophia on leave, but it only made Margaret cockier. She live-streamed herself, popping champagne, posted, "Neighborhood protected by true HOA enforcement." But the detectives dug deeper, uncovering 23 false 911 calls, 47 bogus police reports, 6 counts of impersonating an officer, and a whole history of being banned from prior HOAs. On Monday, Margaret confronted Sophia at the mailbox, ranting about corruption, scratching her own arms bloody, losing her grip on reality. The next HOA meeting called by Thomas was wild. He showed $6,000 Margaret had spent on fake badges, costumes, even forged bylaws in attempts to funnel fines to her own account. Neighbors came out with their own stories, $500 threats at a toddler's birthday fines for looking unpleasant. The final vote, 47-3. Margaret was removed and banned for life. She didn't go quietly. She barricaded herself inside, posted dozens of wild videos, accused Sophia of everything from conspiracy to treason. Her lawyer went for the insanity defense, but the judge had none of it. Margaret got 6 months jail, 3 years probation, 300 hours of community service under Sophia's department, and a lifetime HOA ban. Thomas filed for divorce. Margaret's house sold at a loss to civil rights attorneys who helped the neighborhood sue her for damages. The first real peace we'd had in years was a neighborhood barbecue. Sophia grilling Thomas with his new girlfriend. Everyone relaxed. Nobody afraid to park 2 inches over a line. Sometimes the people with the loudest voices have the weakest claims to power. Real authority doesn't come from badges or blazers. It comes from doing what's right, even when nobody's watching. But you gotta wonder how many other Margarets are out there just waiting for their own little taste of control. So tell me, where do you stand? Was justice really served? Is there any fixing a community once power goes to somebody's head? Let's hear what you think. Drop your take in the comments, because honestly, I think we all know a Margaret or two, don't we?